Do you feel that today's public expects a certain level of that responsibility from their corporations?
I think the public has never been more cynical about what business will do and has never expected more of what business should do. So on the one hand, you'll get the broad public expecting business to be environmentally sensitive, to have excellent labor policies, to be helpful abroad, where we work abroad, with America's reputation, to help with education, to help support the arts. I mean, there's a rare cause that the public doesn't think business should be playing some kind of constructive role, while at the same time they have this extraordinary cynicism and disbelief in the motives of why companies do the good things they do when they do them.
I know that in 2002 you delivered a speech when you were inducted into the Page Society Hall of Fame, referencing the monkey crisis during your days at AT&T.
That was the analog to the Planned Parenthood crisis. The big lesson I took away from that, just a brief stage setter, that was a case where an absolutely wonderful, diversity-minded, socially responsible editor of our company magazine, which went out to hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people, in the course of a story on international business, commissioned from a freelance artist some illustrations. One of those illustrations, which was about 1.5 inches, 2 inches square at most in black and white, had little tiny figures on each continent. And say for Europe, they had like a little Dutch girl, a little Dutch outfit. And on Africa, they had a monkey. This was immediately interpreted as a racist statement. As it happens, because this illustration was so small from a freelance artist and considered so irrelevant to the general content of the magazine, it never went through the normal clearance processes. But when discovered, after the magazine was printed, the editor of the magazine realized that this was potentially, again, stepping into one of these gigantic national issues. And so she issued an apology on behalf of the magazine, which of course called its attention to 300,000 people. And we tried to do a variety of things to manage this, because AT&T was really known for its diversity policies. So we were considered a leader in this field. Somewhere along the line in this, we had what can only be described as a stroke of really lousy luck. And the Black Congressional Caucus held their annual meeting in Washington. The Washington Post picked up this cartoon, enlarged it several times, put it on page 1, and it was delivered to the front door of every black member of Congress. And all of a sudden, we had thought this couldn't possibly get bigger, and it was bigger yet, and totally awful. What I learned from this, other than the usual crisis management issues of emotion, were two big lessons. The first one is that on these highly emotional, highly divisive issues, the building of trust is very fragile. And you may think you have achieved trust and credibility, but there's no such thing as deep-rooted trust and credibility from outside a particular stakeholder group on an issue like this. And it is very easily destroyed and very, very, very hard to rebuild once fractured. The other lesson I learned was what it feels like to be on the line yourself, because I had to do some terrible things during that crisis for the company. I ended up doing something that seemed impossible at the time, which is I had to close down the magazine. It had become a national symbol of racism. and I had to relieve the editor who was a paragon of social responsibility. But as I said to my organization in a meeting and a broadcast, I believe with breaking voice, it was all about accountability and the appearance of accountability. And there is no way to go part way on accountability on issues of this kind. And the sooner you do that, probably the easier it is. So I know what it feels like when we ask our CEOs to do something like this, because this was in my shop. The accountability was ultimately mine. As part of this, I offered up my own resignation to my chairman, who didn't take it, but it was very, very painful. And it reminds you, because it was so painful, that as you ask your senior leadership to step up in these situations, I knew from that day on what it feels like. It ain't easy, and that's why it's so often avoided, because it is personally so painful in these situations to step up and say, not only did I make a mistake, but I have to do things that just, break my heart and may do damage within my company and to employees or what have you in order to make all this right. So, nasty lesson.
Now, what did that occur when the cartoon appeared? Do you recall?
I don't remember. We'd have to look it up.
Okay.
I'm terrible on dates, as you will see.
In that same speech that you delivered in 2002, you also speak frequently of the role of consistency in communications. Could you perhaps elaborate on the role of consistent action and consistent decision-making within corporate communications?
Well, I think, after all, public relations is everybody's job in the company. That's why I think ultimately the single most important stakeholder group is your own employees, because if they're not doing the right thing, then the company is not doing the right thing. But I think as I looked at it over the years and said, what causes people at large, customers, employees, public, regulators, what causes people to trust a company? It seemed to me there were a few characteristics that were applicable everywhere. The first is you have to be consistently good at what you're in business to do. If you don't have consistent quality of product, then there's no reason to trust you to do anything else. So that's fundamental. The second issue is a leader of any enterprise has to not feel erratic or make decisions that are episodic or jerk things back and forth, because you can't trust someone that you can't see on some kind of reasonably predictable path. That doesn't mean that leaders shouldn't be flexible, adaptable, willing to change. That's very different from behavior that is not seen as consistent leadership behavior. And then the third thing is that you need to consistently adhere to a set of values. And that's very hard. You say, what causes people to pursue values? Is it anything we can teach them inside a company? And I doubt that. I think you develop your moral compass earlier in life, and then you have a variety of experiences that either teach you that that's something that you believe in and will help make you a more successful human being in whatever you're doing, or you don't. But what you can teach employees is what actions represent the values that the company intends to stand for, and what actions are outside those boundaries. And I'm not so sure there's as much work done on the actions as there is on the values, which is why I think a lot of employees tend to get a little cynical about all the high-flown language about values. We do this, we believe in that, we put it on the wall, you know, we tattoo it on our shoulder under the butterfly or whatever. And then they look around them, and then there's the set of rules about the way things really work around here, and maybe it's really politics, maybe it's really level, maybe it's you know, the senior leaders take their family on the company plane when they're going on vacation. You know, it's all this stuff. And if Jack Welch said something once in an early annual report, which I think captured it very well. He said, when he's dealing with performance evaluations of his senior team at GE, he said, see if I can get this right, if somebody has great results and you know, great ethics and integrity and behavior, it's easy. If someone has lousy results and lousy ethics and behavior, it's easy. If someone has lousy results and great ethics, it's a little harder, but it's still lousy results. But if someone has great ethics and questionable behavior, it's very hard. And the kinds of things he was trying to put in place there, things like sharing across units in a company that was so decentralized, he really made sure that he reinforced the kinds of behaviors he wanted. And it became very clear to everybody what the strategy was, what the behaviors were that supported it, and what the values were that were represented by those behaviors. Model case. So, but anything you do, you don't do consistently. Why would you trust it?
So in reference to that last response then, it sounds as if you are a supporter of the top-down approach, that ethics and values have to begin at the top of a company in order to work its way down.
They certainly have to. I don't know if the word begin even applies. They certainly have to be represented consistently at the top. But except in very small companies, a lot of people never come in contact with the top, and where the larger the company, the quicker it gets lost in the middle. And the real attention that needs to be paid is at first-line management, where the values that very large groups of people see are actually acted out. And sometimes you can have, you know, the world's best leadership, and things go to hell in a handbasket in your division because somebody is doing things there in a way that is destructive to everybody and not representative of the values, and nobody's doing anything about it. So why should I? And then when you have your crisis, sometimes it's someone down on the line, you know, who's done something, and can you blame them?